Taylor! Why did you run away?
Security police.
I'm in charge of this man.
No longer, madam. He is now in the custody of the Ministry of Science.
Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
Hey, Adrenalheads, I'm Mark.
And I'm Jerry.
And this week we're going to be covering Planet of the Apes from 1968. So this was Jerry's pick, and this is a series that I've loved since I was a kid, and I'm glad that Jerry brought it up. So the first one is so great, and we have to go dive right in. So Jerry, do you want to read that brief synopsis?
Taylor and two other astronauts come out of deep hibernation to find that their ship is crashed. Escaping with little more than the clothes they find, they have landed on a planet where men and prelingual and uncivilized humans, while apes have learned speech and technology. Taylor is captured and taken to the city of the apes after damaging his throat, so he is silent and cannot communicate with the apes.
Very brief, and this is something that I got from Google, or I think it was IMDb at some point too. Very similar and very brief, very understanding. But the thing is for those who have never watched it, will probably like, okay, this is interesting. But they've heard of Planet of the Apes, and I'm sure all of you that are listening right now have heard of Planet of the Apes or have seen some sort of iteration, because this movie has been recreated twice within, I would say, the past 30 years or 25 years. So we had a Tim Burton version. We had a newer version too, with a lot of CGI with James Franco, which, you know, after Jerry had brought this up, I went into that whole, tunnel of going through everything, and I had to watch all the different versions, and they're all uniquely interesting, but this one always captivated me as a child. So with that, we're just going to move right into our general thoughts of the movie first. So Jerry, give your thoughts of the original 1968 version.
This is one of the great classic science fictions, and it's the start of a 5-film series, which ran between 68 and 73 or 74, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And it was just I almost want to call it like a semi-golden age of science fiction, like between the mid-60s and up to 80.
Yeah.
Because there was this, if you look at the way the style was done and all like kind of like the technology was done, you'll see that same style done through like between mid-60s and up to about 1980 when Alien came out.
Mm-hmm.
Because, it seems like a lot of analog stuff, hardly any digital stuff.
A lot of practical effects.
And
too.
a lot of practical effects.
Yeah. And we all love that. I'm a true believer of practical effects.
And I remember this one because, again, when you're 8 years old, you can't really take a grasp on this. I did see it then, but it didn't really grasp me until I was maybe 12 or so.
Yeah.
And I could fully understand what the heck was going on.
Yeah, it's
a great one. So.
It's a great one. And I think of it almost like a classic. And usually, being of my age, only a few years younger than you, Jerry. But regardless, I think of it as a classic because it was in the 60s. It was in the late 60s when this came out. And when I think of classics, born in the 70s or early 70s at that point, I look at like Psycho and a bunch of the horror movies that Vincent Price had done being classics. This is a classic within our time. Correct. Because we were born within that time. And a lot of kids out there or younger people that are out there will go to this because they've watched all the newer versions of this film. And to me, this is my go-to. And, this is my go-to series that I grew up on. And I've been watching this movie series, I think, since I was able to watch TV at some point. all because it was something that was always played on Sundays, you know. They would have like an afternoon event where they would have 2 or 3 movies of these Planet of the Apes series, and they would do it over maybe a course of like 4 or 5 weeks. You would get 1 movie a week, or maybe they'll play 2 within a day, or they'll play it twice or 3 times, who knows. And plus the series and how it was marketed within everything was pretty much what sparked Star Wars and their marketing. And when they didn't, you know, they initially created that whole marketing exploitation of these films. And I think Star Wars took kind of that like little chunk of that idea. And I loved the cartoon series as a kid. And you before we started recording, I actually mentioned it to Jerry, and he goes, "I've never watched it."
Yeah,
but
and now I'm gonna have to look it up.
Gotta look it up, dude. It's interesting because it takes place after Battle of Planet of the Apes. It's like the aftermath or after Taylor and all that good stuff, and it's amazing. This film. We have a lot of people within the film that we've seen before, and we're going to go right into that. And I'll talk about the first one, who we all know, which is...
You better know.
You better know. You better know this guy, Charlton Heston, who played Taylor. And if you have not heard of Charlton Heston in America, then there is something wrong with you. You may have seen some of his movies like Ben-Hur from 1959, The 10 Commandments in 1956, The Omega Man, which I'm a big fan of,
Me too.
In 1971, as well as Tombstone in 1993. And that's just to name a few of his movies. Mind you, he had been around a long time. Now, he has passed. He is an advocate of firearms and everything. But, you know, it's so funny, too, because I just think of him. And when I think of him, I think of my father. And I grew up on that stuff. And my father always loved Charlton Heston. So just kind of like, John Wayne, if you think about it. You know, it's the same thing. But he's played a varying of different characters in every movie he's played. And like I said, I'm not going to go into all of them. So I only gave you a few. So if you're interested in Charlton Heston, check those movies out.
Yeah, Charlton Heston would be a podcast unto himself. So
I think Ben needs to do that on Wilhelm.
Yes. He might,
Next up.
Okay, we have Roddy McDowall as Cornelius, who's been on TV and film since he was a kid. And he's been a staple in the name and the way he portrays characters, which we all love. Now, he's been in movies like Lassie Come Home in 43, Twilight Zone, a couple of, I think 1 or 2 episodes of there, in an episode called People Are Alike All Over. And one of my favorite roles of his was in Fright Night.
Yes. Yeah, I love that original Fright Night version. They did do a remake, which I did enjoy, but I prefer the original because I just like the original thought. But yeah, and Roddy McDowall is somebody that you could always look and say, I love that guy. You know, he plays that character actor, and he is perfect for it.
Yeah, I looked up his IMDb page, and he's got a ton of credits.
Oh, yes, he does. And we only named a few because if we go down that list, we're going to go down that rabbit hole, and we're not going to stop, you know.
And one thing that's very distinctive about him is even if he's in full makeup, when he speaks, you know his voice.
Oh, yes, you do.
It's a very distinctive voice. And Charlton that also applies to Heston. Oh,
yeah, Heston as well. Yeah, and he did do a part in the Marky Mark or Mark Wahlberg version in Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes.
Oh, he did a cameo.
He did a cameo, and he was in makeup. He played a chimp.
I gotta go back and look at that because I don't remember that. Yeah, because I have seen it, but it's been a while. So.
It's been a while, but the thing is, for all you listeners out there, it's a little tidbit, but I enjoyed it. I'm a big Tim Burton fan, so obviously it's not the highest on my list. But the thing is, I did enjoy it for the fact that he tried, and there's a lot of Pierre Boulle's version within it at the very end. So we'll get into that later on when we talk about the writer of the actual, story that the movie was adapted to. Next up.
Okay, we have Kim Hunter. She was in this one and also in a number of other films like Streetcar Named Desire. She was also briefly in Beneath the Planet of the Apes, and she was also in Escape from the Planet of the Apes and both as Dr. Zira, and in a ton of other movies and TV. Again, It's another one of those actors who has a ton of credits to go through.
Yeah, but we all think of Kim Hunter, though, based upon Zira, and I always go to it for the fact of her voice. Her voice is very distinguished, very much like Roddy McDowall, very much like Charlton Heston. So I always think of Kim Hunter as Zira, and I had multiple times at conventions where I could actually meet her, and I never did. Unfortunately, I was not able to. But I was told she was the sweetest person, and she has a lot of film roles. If you're really interested in her, she looks nothing like the gorilla that you see on screen. Trust me.
Very much so, yes.
Yeah, exactly right. Next up would be James Daly, and he played Honorius. He did a bunch of TV. He was in The Fugitive, some Star Trek, and Medical Center. So he has been on TV, pretty much like a staple on TV and cameo actor more than anything.
Yeah, and when I looked that up, Medical Center, it was on for 6 years. And again, it's one of those, like, I thought I would have seen it, but nope.
Exactly. Nope. I've not either.
And we're talking like 100 and something, like 150 something or 180 episodes, something like that. But oh well, it's like I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, and finally we have Maurice Evans, who played Dr. Zayas, and I knew him, as Dr. Zayas and Hutch in Rosemary's Baby, which is one of my favorites.
Yes.
Again, it's another good one. And he also played Samantha's dad in Bewitched. It's kind of like this really stubborn warlock that was really, kind of unforgiving of Theron. So.
A profound voice, too, by the way. You would know him by voice. So if you heard it on a show and you grew up on these movies like, Jerry and I have, you would know that voice and be like, wait, hold on, that's Dr. Zayas. Now they have done something recently. I forget what comedian has done it on YouTube, but they're doing things with like an interview session with Dr. Zayas, and it's pretty awesome. Check it out.
And it sounds very much like him.
Yes, he does. And I really do enjoy it. But with that, we'll go right and move along right into our favorite thought or favorite scenes of the particular movie in 1968 from Planet of the Apes. So, Jerry, start us off with your first one.
But I wanted to mention this about the movie too, is that when we see the Ape Society, it's split into a strict caste system. And this will come in later, and where the gorillas are the military force and mostly laborers, orangutans are governmental people and religious figures, and
science figures too.
And chimpanzees are mostly the scientists and the doctors. And this society is a theocracy because Dr. Zayas is called the protector of the faith.
Correct. Yes, he is. And also scientists.
Yeah. Very true, yes. Yeah. And the apes consider primitive humans as vermin to be hunted or killed outright, enslaved, or used in scientific experiments.
Yeah. It kind of mimics our own society if you think about it.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah. And that was, I think, part of the point of the movie is it does comment on our society.
It was basically a commentary on our own society at that time, between 1968 all the way into the 70s. And I think that is what really captured my thoughts as a kid or as I was watching these movies as they came out when they were available on TV. Obviously, we had movie days or like Sundays, like I stated before. We would have movie days where they would have it, or they would do them like a marathon at times. And, you know, the first one was heralded greatly, but after that, the sequels were not really met as much over the years. And the thing is that it's still a staple in this this world. People look at these movies and they do enjoy them. I do enjoy them. I have the Blu-ray box set, by the way, and we'll go into that later too, because there's a lot of cool stuff on those Blu-rays that you could get. Like a few documentaries, the making of, how they were able to do that. For that time, it was innovative, but we'll talk about it later. So with me, the whole beginning of the movie and how we were introduced to the characters, you know, the flight and how Taylor documents their journey. He's kind of pompous in his way, if you think about it. He's kind of a jerk. But the scene where we see Stewart dead in her chamber on the ship scared the crap out of me as a kid all the time. Even now as an adult, I see that and it's like they have that screeching crack. And they focus in on it. And Taylor states that she's been dead for pretty much, what, a year?
A year or so, She's all kind of mummified.
Green.
Yeah, mummified and green.
Yeah. But and I just love everything that leads up to the remaining crew before they're actually captured in the cornfields by the apes itself.
And that one's on my list as well, because up to that point is where as before they're being captured, is that this is when they find the other humans that are kind of mute and just kind of forage around for food.
They're pretty much animalistic, if you think about it. They don't know how to speak. They don't have any way of communicating properly. And then they all know how to work together, which is very interesting. It's very much ape-like, if you think about it.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's kind of a reversal. So the apes are intelligent and are doing these things and deem these people as primates and have to deal with them. But they do experiments on them. Very much like how humans do everything with apes now.
Correct. Yeah, and one of these, and this was the reveal of the apes, to be riding on horseback.
Yes.
And one of my things that I liked was you didn't see them, but as they're walking through the corn, they're beating the corn with these long staffs, like driving the humans out. And just the sound of the whooshing.
Yes.
I think that's meant to intimidate.
It is. And it was and this leads into mine, which I love the cinematography within the film, because literally within the film, they use a lot of flashpoint. If you look at it, the sun is gazing right in and pierces your eyes. So you can't really see the ape as he's coming upon Taylor and his crew at that point. And then as soon as you see that silhouette, that is what's scary, because you could clearly see it's an ape, but shadowing of it. And that's our first image. And that was really cool for its time.
Well, and it's another thing to see an ape on horseback with a rifle. Yeah, it is. To add on to that, the location where the ship had crashed was so amazing to see as a kid, as well as an adult too, because as I watched this, I think I watch this almost every 2 years or something like that. I'll just binge watch these movies because I just have to have my fix of Roddy McDowell or having the Planet of the Apes. And I just love the look. And they were all real-time looks. They were all location shoots, if you think about it. Yeah.
And I just love it. Plus the sets within the Ape City were amazing. I just loved them and I adored them. Real workable sets for people to interact with too, especially that museum. And I really want to go see that museum.
Does that museum still exist?
I do not know, but if somebody recreates it, I will go there in a heartbeat.
Yeah, that would be one to see. So
yeah.
Okay, so what's the next scene you got?
Next scene I have?
Yes.
That would be after the hunt scene. We see the apes doing what all hunters do with their prey. They take a picture with them, pretty much a commentary of the human race within it. If you think about it, we think of us as ourselves as the dominant, superior being on this earth. But in this case, in this movie, humans are looked at as a lower species, and they're being hunted. And I think the whole movie is just a whole commentary for our planet. And history just seems to repeat itself over and over again. I'm wondering what will replace us after a certain time, and whether within war, society, and social disorders, because that's literally how the movie is. It talks, even within ape culture, it's very similar to man culture.
Yes. Yeah, and what I noticed about the scene you mentioned is that they're carrying them on this stick, by their feet and by the feet and the ankles, much like we do with the forelegs with other animals like deer.
Correct.
And other things.
Yeah.
And these other apes are taking a picture with some bodies like trophy hunters.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
very similar to almost like if you look at Night of the Living Dead,
yes.
Dawn of the Dead, those movies, even the remakes, they do that. There was Land of the Dead with George A. Romero, and they do the same thing too, because they have the zombies up, very similar. Mm-hmm. And it's like human see, human do.
Exactly. Okay, and my next one is the trial of Taylor. After one of the times he escapes, the trial is subsequent to this, but one of the times he escapes and finds out he can speak. The trial comes out and says, we're going to see what the disposition of this person is. And in addition to the heresy of Cornelius and Zira.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's part of one of mine that I love too. I love the trial and everything centered around it. Literally just casting aside Taylor. Mm-hmm. But everything is really centered around Zira and Cornelius. Mm-hmm. And he can't even speak for himself because they don't think of him as equal in any way. Even though he can speak, they think of him as like a freak of nature. And it's kind of like a con game. Somebody taught this person to do these things. Mm-hmm.
And that's the position that the orangutans take on it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's such a weird take on it too, because you have to look at it from the perspective of Taylor. You're being silenced because, all right, you're not from this world. Okay, you are human, but humans are, it's as if we had a talking monkey ourselves in this world, and they're able to communicate, and we just look at them going, what are you? My name's Grog. I'm from like the Superman universe, and I could speak. But the thing is that with him in this world, humans don't speak, and that can never be because it's against all their philosophies, their religions, their thoughts of how they were made to be, because they have their own, I hate saying it, religion, or their thought of how they came to be. I'm not sure if paleontology or anything else goes into it, but they just don't accept it whatsoever. So it's kind of the same thing that man does. If I don't believe it or don't understand it, I kill it. And that's literally what they wanted to do to Taylor. They wanted to kill him.
Yes. At the very least, geld him and lobotomize him. Oh,
yeah. And they already did that to Landon.
Yes, they did. Yeah. And we should mention that their governing principle are the sacred scrolls. I think that's what they call them. So
correct. Yeah. They have their own sacred scrolls, which would kind of be biblical or anything religious. And it's what they model their society off of. So they can't go outside of that. Whereas Zira and Cornelius tend to think outside of it because they're thinking more scientific.
Yes.
Meaning that's how advanced that they have become. But the fact that, in Boule's work or his short story, when this person comes from the past to go into the future. It's different within the book, and I'll explain it flat out. Basically, he goes to a different planet, and apes rule the world, and they have everything: helicopters, a subway system, transit, everything within city structures, everything. He shows up. We do see that at the very end of the Tim Burton film. We never saw that. Within this movie, they do a twist. So, but the thing is that with this, he is stuck in a world where he doesn't know what the hell to do. And it's a struggle. And it's a struggle for him to prove himself of who he is, where he came from, to animals that, it just makes me think of what would happen if an alien showed up on our world saying, I created your world. And, all these weird things that could come into play. And it's very similar. And, I'm curious if somebody would actually take that or make that take within a film or an adaptation where they used an alien to do that. That would be amazing.
And then we have one of my other favorite scenes is the scene in the cave at the beach within the Forbidden Zone.
Oh, yeah.
And we find out why it's called the Forbidden Zone. And that's because Dr. Zaius already knows that men have predated apes on this planet. And
he had a clue. I think he had a clue. He didn't have all the information or the answers. Cornelius kind of points it out to him, if you think about within the movie. And that is why he shuts off and why he got rid of Landon. Dodge was already dead. Now they're stuck with Taylor. And Taylor's a hindrance because he could just destroy everything that they have.
Yeah, he'll blow up the system, as it were.
Exactly. He'll destroy their system and state, okay, well, I came from this. Very different from the Boulle story itself too, because at the very end we find out he is on Earth. But the thing is also that in Boulle's story, it's a different planet, and I really enjoyed that change. There are different versions that are out there that you could actually download. You could buy them. They're in multiple different languages, but I wish I spoke French because that way I would actually read this version.
The original version. Yes.
The original version of how it is. I have an English version that I have on PDF that I actually read recently. And it's so amazing, so very different. And you have to realize that these movies are adapted from books or shows or TV or comic books or whatever. In this case, this was adapted from a short story. It's not a long story. It's a short story, but it actually got accolades when it came out. And that's the reason why that IP got bought out, so that they could actually do a representation of this within film. Yeah. And I really do appreciate it because it's a very different adaptation, because every book has a different version. I Am Legend is different. A whole bunch of other books are different. A lot of people kept saying that I Am Legend was about zombies. No, it was more about vampires.
Vampires, yes, correct.
Same thing with Omega Man. If you think about it, it was the same thing that Charlton Heston was in. So, but I just like the idea. And this adaptation that I watched as a kid and still continue to watch, I enjoy.
Yeah, and it's always a good one. And I'll let you do the top scene here.
The Taylor's escape from the zoo?
Well, no, the other. That's one top scene, but the let's go that one first. Yes.
Yeah. Taylor's escape from the zoo. That, to me, he encounters a wake for an ape, and the way they go through the eulogy of the ape at hand is very similar to the way we as humans do it. And I was very shocked too, because I was watching this late at night last night actually, before we actually started recording. And I looked, and the coffin looked made of wood. That was a lot of work involved in that. Where is that coffin now?
Yeah, it almost it reminds me of a sarcophagus like King Tut was in.
Correct. Yeah, and I just love that. Then his chase within the city, his venturing within the museum, and then seeing Dodge's stuffed body as an exhibit. He sees him. He already knew that Dodge was killed. And I would love to have seen that museum, I already said it before, in real life, but if they actually kept that set, but I don't think they did because
Probably not.
yeah, it's the late 60s. Come on, it's long and gone.
Mhm.
There was a weird claw kind of monument or structure.
Yeah, it was like a center column around a big spiral staircase.
Yeah. And it was weird to look at, and I just love that. I wonder what that was, though, exactly, because it looked like something that, like a dragon or something.
Yeah, it looked like a foot and talons of a dragon.
Yeah,
It had several big toes on it, like they grabbed something and it was upside down, pointed
yeah,
up.
yeah. It was wild. And then, of course, we get that classic line that Taylor states in the courtyard where he is being held up by a net, and he says, "Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape."
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that is so classic. That is classic Planet of the Apes. That is classic cinema. We all know that word.
Yeah, and it is the reason it's so classic is because every single primate in that courtyard has never heard a human speak.
Exactly. And it's
and when that line's spoken, it's spoken with hostility.
Yes. And they don't know how to take it. It's as if, oh crap, all right, I'll just use this, and I'm sure Daphne will probably be upset. We take a ferret, and the ferret starts screaming at us, going, "What the hell are you touching me for? You're making me squirm." Something like that.
Yes, exactly.
It's like as soon as like an animal that you would never know that could speaks, or Rocket the raccoon going, "Hey, buddy, can I get that arm?" What the hell was that? If you look at the Marvel Avengers, you got Rocket the raccoon. He's an enhanced raccoon, and asking the Winter Soldier for his arm. But yeah, to me, it would be the same issue. It's as if, like, what if we picked up something that we thought maybe a rodent or something, and it says, "Get your damn hands off me, dude. Let me go about my business and get my food." I'll be like, okay. And then be shocked for a moment and be like, "Hey, can we be friends?"
Exactly.
Things like that, But the thing is, in this case, they take it in the standpoint of society, and they're like, "Oh, kill it."
Yeah, because what do they know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's a very human thing to do. It's like, usually it's like, "Oh, kill it." Next up.
Okay, we are at the very top scene of this movie.
Yes.
The Liberty reveal on the beach. I mean, really, what else could it be with this movie?
Yeah. Yeah, that one scene, I love it. You get to see the Statue of Liberty coming out of the sand.
Yeah.
The part of this that I really enjoyed about the movie, and, you and I could both input our own thoughts within this during this time, the fact that Cornelius and Zira helped Taylor at the end really meant a lot to me. And I just love how Zira says, and when Taylor goes, "I want to give you a kiss, but you're so goddamn ugly." But we get that iconic ending. We all find out that Dr. Zaius, as you said before, is hiding his findings over the years because he knew the truth about man. And that classic scene as we get from the Statue of Liberty, and it's sticking out of the sand, and Taylor says, "You blew it. You destroyed it. You did everything." It was just so far in the future where man has destroyed itself and man has been replaced by apes. So, and they build up the sequels or the movie series where we get to that point where Battle of the Planet of the Apes. Yeah. And they did do that within the 2000s when they actually did a trilogy of films, and they were very good. They were very well done. I think by the third one, it kind of gotten tired out. People were getting tired of it. They're like, "Oh, we liked the first film that was really good with James Franco." It showed something like, what was that movie with Bruce Willis with the monkeys? I'm forgetting.
12 Monkeys?
12 Monkeys, yeah. And Brad Pitt. Think about it. A virus had destroyed the world and,
drove humans out.
And very similar, but the thing is that they did it in true fashion of Planet of the Apes. This was something that that first film with Franco was very good. In a sense, it set itself up. Second movie, okay, interesting. And by the third one, people kind of lost interest. And I understand that, there's only so much you could do with that. And it should be left as a trilogy. Yeah. At least at the very end, they were all working together, humans and apes.
Yeah, and the one thing I did like about the James Franco version in 2011 was it showed how humans were wiped out by that disease.
Exactly. And it was his idea of trying to get rid of Alzheimer's.
Yes.
And that's where, and then they did, I think it's, I'm forgetting, it was called something 112, and then it was called something 113. 113 is really what wiped out the world. So whatever the toxin.
Yeah, and I did like it. It showed that the pilot that was infected, how he spread. He was like patient zero in that spread.
Yes,
and that's kind of parallel to
what we're going through with the pandemic and everything. Yeah,
and it shows like him hopping between city to city, and every infected vector going to all the other cities.
Correct. Yeah.
And that's how it happens.
And it was really good for them to do that at the end credits where they show that. So it really propelled that. And I really do enjoy those shows. I have all three. I do have them on my iTunes, so I could watch them at any given time. And like I said, I had to go down that rabbit hole. To give credit where credit is due with Tim Burton, he tried to give it his Tim Burton levity on it. And I really enjoyed that film too. Not because, well, obviously, of course, it's Tim Burton, but we have so many key actors within that film. Mm-hmm. But Mark Wahlberg would not have been my first choice. Yeah. But we have a story, and the story is very interesting. But at the very ending of the film gives or pays tribute to Pierre Boulle. And I really do enjoy that. That was the one thing when I sat in the theater and I saw that, I'm like, oh my God, they finally did it. Mm-hmm. They finally did it. And they gave it the proper, the proper ending or the proper visual of how apes were modernized within that world. And there were no humans. And now Marky Mark's character was kind of like, oh my God, this is weird. How do we have this? But I love all the iterations. This one I love the most because, it was the first. It was the one that we grew up on. And like I said, it was all the visuals, everything that I loved about the film. I'm sure you have a lot more, Jerry, that you could talk about.
Yeah, on the scenes or the...
overall about the movie.
Overall. Yeah, and I know there's certain visuals after Taylor, Dodge, and Landon crash, they're walking through this kind of like a little ravine, and it has these what I would call the scarecrows up at the top.
Were those ape scarecrows?
I don't know exactly what they were, but they look like ape skins.
They look like ape skins to me. Yeah. And when I was watching last night, I was like, oh my God, are those ape skins? Or who put them there? Did the apes put them there?
I would think that the apes put them there. But if they're made out of ape skins, what the heck? So,
exactly. That's kind of brutal.
Yes, it is. And they kind of remind me of the flayed man sigil from Game of Thrones.
Oh, yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, and I wish there was a little bit more to the opening scene because, maybe another few minutes to that. Because it was, cold open.
The cold open with him in space and him space. Talking into the recorder.
Yeah, just a little bit more on that.
Yeah, and what's up with him, smoking a cigar in the middle of space with that flammable material right to his right that he lays it next to that could blow up the whole set.
Well, and that part, I would like to be a little bit longer because maybe a little bit more commentary on his part. But what I did like about that is they called it Dr. Haslein's theory about, time dilation, but it's actually just standard time dilation that would happen as if you're approaching the speed of light, your time slows down when everybody else's goes.
Yes.
And as that happened, they were gone a few, I forget how many months or years, while a couple thousand years have already passed.
For them, it was almost a year, and then it was over 2,000 or 10,000, 20,000 years or something.
Yeah, it was. When I checked it, this did get me. The first time their time was in 1972.
Yes,
and the Earth time at the beginning of the movie was 2673, and when they crashed, as they're getting out, Taylor looks at the clock and it reads 3978. Which I was thinking is like, I think this would have happened in a little bit longer than a couple thousand years because, if it was a nuclear war, radiation would be around for a little bit longer than a couple thousand, like 1,000 years or so. Now, if it read 9378, I would have believed it more, maybe a little bit more. Just, it's these little things that kind of bug me.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of a movie that came out not too long ago with Matthew McConaughey and...
Are you talking Interstellar? Or?
Yeah, Interstellar. There you go. Yeah, I'm thinking about that. And
Jessica Chastain.
Yeah.
Is one of them, so.
She's one. Yeah, she's one. She plays the older version of the daughter. But, we get that whole point, and there's a lot of things that you have to suspend your disbelief because it's at a certain point in the movie where you have to stop it and be like, okay, well, this makes sense up to this point. Yeah. When he goes back in time and whatever and to get somebody, it's ridiculous. But the fact that you had one person that stopped while they were on the planet, but they aged. Yeah. And I really enjoyed that aspect. And I think that's pretty much where they put this within this movie, where, there's a certain point where you stop, but everybody's aging
around you. Because time dilation is a real thing. We have to do a pre-correction for some satellites that are way out in for geosynchronous orbit satellites.
Yes.
Those have to have a time dilation correction dialed in so there's no delay.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's wild to think that it's like you could be shut out into space and put under some sort of isolation cube or whatever, a suspended animation as it were. And then you could look like you were yesterday. And then everybody else on Earth is already gone and dead at that point.
Yeah, one of the scenes in there is that Taylor is talking to Landon as they're rowing away from the crashed ship, the side of the ship after it sank, is that everyone is dead and buried and they're dust.
Yeah. And he kind of breaks them down too within that scene as well. Taylor basically breaks down Landon and describes him to a T. And then even Landon says, I can't describe you and who you are because I can't understand who you are.
Yeah.
And it's really weird. Now, mind you, the woman that was on board was meant to be the Eve. Now, if they were smart, they would have had 3 women and then 2 men to procreate in this world.
Yes.
But obviously they didn't think that through when they created this movie. It's centered about men.
Yeah, well, NASA is all about redundancy. So
yeah. Well, under redundant in the dictionary, it says see redundant. So I know. All right. Well, with that, we're going to just move right along and go right into our interesting facts or unknown facts about the movie Planet of the Apes from 1968. So, Jerry, you want to start us off?
Okay. One thing I found out is looking through the Amazon credits, because I have this on Amazon Prime.
Sure.
That Ingrid Bergman had turned down the part of Zira, and in later years she regretted it because she was surprised that the film turned out so well, and she regretted missing out working with Heston. Huh. And I was like, what the hell? Exactly.
Right.
And it's one of those things you read that and it's like, that would have been so damn good.
It would have been so great. Mark Bergman.
Because do you consider Ingrid Bergman to put on an ape suit?
Be amazing.
It would be amazing.
Yeah.
As it was, Kim Hunter putting on the ape suit was, good in and of itself.
Yeah, it was, and it was very challenging for all those actors too to do that work within those prosthetics.
Yes.
All right. Well, first one for me would be most studios and books author thought it would make a terrible movie. So apes, especially talking ones, were the stuff of B movies back in the 1960s. So nobody took them seriously. That's exactly the mantra producer Arthur P. Jacobs ran into when he was shopping Planet of the Apes around Hollywood. Jacobs' pitch was soundly rejected everywhere he went. Even Pierre Boulle author of the source material, La Planète des Singes, agreed for the documentary. In the documentary Behind the Planet of the Apes, it's revealed that Boulle considered the book one of his lesser works and never imagined it that it would ever make it into theaters. Wow. Now, mind you, it became a staple in American cinematic history.
Yeah, and a whole lot of he's like, yeah, and they also say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
Yeah.
Is that how many times have you seen this done up on other shows, like, you know, The Simpsons has done it?
Oh, it's been done so many times, yeah.
And how many times do you hear quotes?
Come on, think about, what was it? They did something in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, and they had a little scene where you see Randall run and Dante running for their lives from the apes, and they actually had a whole thing with the apes. Mm-hmm. So you know, it's like it's still going after all these years.
Okay, my next one is the makeup on this film accounted for a fifth of the budget of the movie, which is quite a bit for a movie that was, I think the budget was about $5 million here.
Yes.
Yeah. And in that, all these actors and extras were not allowed to take their makeup or their masks off until the end of the day's shoot. Mm-hmm. So as a result of that, they had to be on a liquid diet.
Yes. Think about that. Because to take all that prosthetic off was like a pain in the neck.
Yeah, and and the added little kick in the teeth for that is that this movie was shot between May and August.
Oh God, the worst.
A nice time of year anywhere, especially in the Southwest where they were shooting at.
Exactly. Yeah, we're already feeling the heat as it is now. So.
Yeah, and as I'm in my third week of 100-degree plus weather. So. Yeah,
and we're about 80 degrees and humidity, which equals up to about over 100.
Yes, exactly.
In the East Coast.
On to you.
Well, next up for me would be a makeup test helped convince 20th Century Fox to produce the movie. So Jacob's Planet of the Apes pitch did manage to catch the attention of one executive, former vice president of 20th Century Fox, Richard Zanuck. But Zanuck had one reservation. What if people laughed at the makeup? Up until that point, on-screen apes had either been real monkeys or people in flimsy costumes. And if the makeup didn't hit the mark, the movie wouldn't work. To convince Zanuck, Jacobs shot a makeup test complete with star Charlton Heston as George Taylor and Edward G. Robinson, who later dropped out of the film, as Dr. Zaius, and full ape getup. A young James Brolin and Linda Harrison, who would be cast in the full movie as Nova, played the two chimps, Cornelius and Zira. Though it cost a mere $5,000 to shoot, the test impressed Zanuck enough to quell fears over the makeup, and he agreed to give Jacobs and director Frank Schaffner $5 million to get Planet of the Apes off the ground. So without that makeup test, they wouldn't have even gone anywhere.
Yeah, I have a couple of notes on scenes. Okay, the crash scene was filmed around Lake Powell, which is on in Utah. And I've seen Lake Powell from the air. It's a very weird shaped lake, and it's kind of in, I would call it the Badlands, which is very impressive, which if you look at that, is exactly right for where they crashed. And I've seen other films like in that, I think Goblin Valley is near there, and it's just very rocky, has and the lake is beautiful and it's huge.
Yeah, the original Westworld movie had that too, where they were going over some sort of desert terrain. Mm-hmm. If you think about when the ship took off too, very similar. And that is so scary. Yeah, and crashing into something like that.
Yeah. And thankfully they hit water, but
yeah, exactly, right?
Which at that speed probably wouldn't make much of a difference, but
no. It still sunk, mm-hmm. As Landon would say. It's gone.
Yeah. And the final scene was filmed at Point Dume here in California off the coast of Malibu. And the final shot of that with the Statue of Liberty was matted in, so it would meld seamlessly, which it did.
Yeah, I did. And that's still an iconic scene.
Mm-hmm.
I still love it. It's one of those things that everybody goes to and everybody remembers it. All right. Well, next up for me would be the man behind the makeup also helped design Spock's ears. So the man hired to design the increasingly vital ape makeup for the movie was John Chambers, who had made a name for himself by this time as one of the premier creature effects artists in Hollywood. He had experienced working on sci-fi and fantasy shows like The Munsters, The Outer Limits, and Lost in Space. But this is his biggest contribution to the genre, was his makeup for, Spock's pointy ears for Star Trek's TV series. Chambers' background was unique in Hollywood at that time, and in his younger days, he worked as a veterans hospital after World War II, where he helped design prosthetics and facial restorations for soldiers wounded in combat. So that's pretty cool. He's using realistic things to project these things to get these apes to be realistic. I really enjoy that.
Yeah, and with that, I think they had to do some like over exaggeration under the makeup to make it seem like the apes had proper facial motion and facial tics.
Yes, very much like around the eyebrows, the cheeks, but they could never do it with the lips. If you look, their mouths literally went up and down because their teeth were in front of the fake teeth for the prosthetics was in front of their lips. So you really couldn't see the pronunciation of what they were doing. But then again, this is 1968. They didn't have everything that we have today.
Correct.
Yeah.
And for the time, it was pretty dang good. Yeah.
It was. And it won awards for it too, by the way, which we'll get into later.
Yes. Okay. This is my next to last one. It's like the final scene with Taylor coming across the Statue of Liberty was initially suggested by Rod Serling. And this is according to rumor. I'll have that caveat right there. Pierre Boulle was upset by this ending, but later warmed to it, preferring this ending over the very different ending he had written.
Yes. Yeah, that's been heard so many times. I think I have that in my notes that I had just copy and pasted like Mr. Mark Bernardin does for Fat Man Beyond. But I've heard this so many times. They had to change that final ending scene, which is amazing. And we have cinematic history with that too. And I'm glad about it. I'm glad we got that ending. If it was different, where it was a different planet, it would be like, oh crap, that sucks.
Yeah. And the fact that he comes back to Earth but doesn't know it until he sees that.
Yeah, and the fact that he finally sees that is the heartbreaking end, and that's what makes this whole movie. It's like he's been battling all this time to find out I've been on Earth all this time. Yeah.
And sorry for the spoiler, but if you haven't seen it by now, it's too late because the movie's been out 53 years. Come on.
Well, I'm sure they have heard of it and have probably watched it in some degree. Come on.
Yeah, I know.
I'm going to skip over a few, and one of them I'm going to drop into now with mine is writer Michael Wilson brought more humor and political overtones to the script. So after much of Serling's script was deemed unusable, writer Michael Wilson was brought on board to create a filmable version of the movie. Wilson was a victim of Hollywood's blacklisting in the 50s, being forced to be go uncredited for some of the most notable works, including the script of 1958's Bridge on the River Kwai, which is one of my father's favorite movies, and I have. Which was adapted from a Boulle novel as well. So Wilson's Apes work included punching up the dialogue to be more humorous and introducing the idea of the sham of a trial that Heston's Taylor has to endure. No doubt a callback to Wilson's own experience on the blacklist that he had endured during that time in the 50s, which is amazing. These new drafts overhauled much of the existing script, which led Serling to say, it's really Mike Wilson's screenplay much more than mine, which is a nice tribute.
Yes.
It's cool.
Well, because if you can get praised by Serling for your writing, that's high praise coming from Serling.
Oh, yeah. Rod Serling was amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. And I do watch The Twilight Zone every year. I try to binge watch all those shows.
Yeah, and I watch, and I make certain references on these, on The Twilight Zone. And that's another one of my favorite series, but, we'll have to.
Yeah, especially, what was the one with the nurse and the doctors with the faces, and they have to make people look normal, and they are normal, but everybody has, really weird lips.
Yeah, that one's called Eye of the Beholder.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I can't remember the names of particular episodes, but I do remember specific scenes.
Yeah.
And they're all amazing. Same thing with Shatner's version of
Nightmare 20,000 Feet or something like that.
Yeah. Yep. That was an amazing story. And then on top of that, they did that in the movie too.
Mm-hmm.
Which we're not going to go into, and we've kind of digressed.
We always digress. Come on.
We always do. All right. Next up that you have?
Last one I have was Charlton Heston was Xanax's first choice for Taylor. With Marlon Brando being a backup.
Oh, yes. I heard about that too.
I would have thought it's like if you could have it so you could see Marlon Brando playing that role, that would have been an interesting take on him doing that as well. Yeah. Like have Marlon Brando and Ingrid Bergman instead of, Taylor and Hunter. Heston and Hunter. Sorry, excuse me.
Yeah. All right. Well, next up for me would be a chip-handed makeup artist, John Chambers, his honorary Oscar. So, in 1969, there wasn't an Oscar category for achievement in makeup, but John Chambers' work on Planet of the Apes was so far beyond the industry standard that it had to be recognized in some way. The Academy decided on an honorary Oscar for outstanding makeup achievement and presented it during the 41st Academy Awards. Chambers was introduced into the crowd by Walter Matthau, but the real star was the chimpanzee decked out in a tux that handed Chambers his award.
Nice. So I have to look that one up if I can find it.
Yeah, you gotta. I'm sure it's on YouTube. Mm-hmm. But the thing is at that point, there were no makeup effects awards at that point. And it's something that I actually spoke to Tom Savini, recently about. Mm-hmm. And you listeners are out there that are listening, we're all trying to do something for Tom. So just contact me if you're interested. We're trying to get Tom a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. So
he deserves one so much.
He does.
I mean, for all his work, are you kidding me?
Yeah, he's amazing. Mm-hmm. He's an amazing man. That man got into an accident. He was just riding his bike, got hit by a car, and now he's up and standing, and then he's in his mid-70s.
Oh, jeez.
And he's doing great. He's more powerful. He is the sex machine that he was in From Dusk Till Dawn. He's strong. All right. Do we continue on with what I have here, Jerry?
Yeah, you got a couple more. Yeah.
All right. So, a trip to Delhi inspired the ending. So early on in the process, producer P. Jacobs and director Blake Edwards, who was originally attached to direct the Planet of the Apes, were having trouble cracking the film's ending. So in Boulle's original novel, the action doesn't take place on a completely different planet. It does take place in a completely different planet. Just to let you know. So for the movie, though they wanted something less predictable, while eating at a deli near the Warner Brothers lot, Jacobs brought up the idea of having Taylor stranded on Earth the whole time without the character or the audience knowing it. So the stage was set but they needed a hook as the two men of the deli. They looked at the painting of the Statue of Liberty near the cash register. According to Jacobs, the men had just found their rosebud, as it was called. Rosebud. Mm-hmm. A call soon went out to Serling, who integrated their ideas into the script and what the writers call a collaboration with Jacobs. So I think it is genius, or what they did. It's amazing.
Yeah, because the Statue of Liberty is such an iconic figure.
Oh, yes. And you have to think about it, too.
Mm-hmm.
Taylor came back onto this planet, and it's ruled by apes. In a sense, he is an alien.
Correct.
And you got Liberty Island, which was also affiliated with Ellis Island, which integrated what? Aliens.
Aliens. Yes, exactly.
All right. The Statue of Liberty at the end was a combination of scale model and matte paintings. So with the budget constraints already bearing down on them, there was no logical way to create an entire full-scale model of the destroyed Statue of Liberty for the film's twist ending. Instead, the production combined a matte painting by Emil Cosa Jr., the man behind the original 20th Century Fox logo, with a practical model of, for the statue reveal. So the model wasn't really created for the whole statue, though instead of half scale of the creation of the Statue of Liberty head and torch were constructed to be shot for a scaffold for the statue's slow reveal. So it's not the whole thing. Yeah. Because
you only see like just at the chest and up.
The chest and up, which makes more sense.
Yeah, and I remember this the first time I'd seen this, and fully got full grasp and wrap my brain around it, is that you see the points on the crown and then the arch of it.
Yes.
And that's when I said, oh shit, he's on Earth. Because I was thinking, because who else is going to make that?
Exactly. Nobody else could do that.
Yeah.
And go figure. France created a Statue of Liberty too, by the way.
France's gift to the United States.
Yes, it is. They had multiple too. There were multiple versions of the Statue of Liberty. You could go out there. You could actually go see them. They're in various places. Yeah. So check them out. If you're really true historian and really like to get into these things, do it. You go down that rabbit hole and have fun.
Yeah.
Good places to go too, because they're all historic.
Mm-hmm.
You want to continue this one that I have as listed as number 12?
Yes. An earlier draft had much more of an optimistic ending. And compared to today's blockbusters, Planet of the Apes ends on a bit of a downer. We learn that humanity is lost as Earth has been destroyed, with only the crumbling image of the Statue of Liberty left to remind us of our once grand civilization. However, Michael Wilson's earlier draft would have left the movie with a single sliver of hope about humanity's future. In this draft, it's learned that toward the end of the film that Nova is pregnant with Taylor's child, though Taylor is struck down by an ape assassin shortly after laying eyes on the crumbling Lady Liberty. Nova escapes into the Forbidden Zone with her unborn child, setting up a potential sequel and showing that perhaps humanity could live on in some way. Fox executives nixed that idea, fearing that Nova wouldn't be perceived as purely human by audiences. Wilson referred to as a humanoid in an interview with Cinema Fantastique, leaving an awkward question about whether there was an interspecies romance between her and Taylor.
Huh. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. But she's human, just so it really wouldn't be
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, so it really wouldn't be an interspecies romance. It would be like, a romance with a human devolved maybe a little bit, but still human.
Yeah, technically, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, think about it. There's only one, when it comes to science about apes and man, there's only, a chromosome away or something like that?
Yeah, very few.
Yeah, which is really weird. But you can't get a chimpanzee pregnant.
Correct.
If you're a man. So if you're all trying out there doing that, don't do it. Don't do it. Yeah, I went there. Okay.
Nice. Okay.
All right. So right now we're just going to move right on to quotes.
Mm-hmm.
So I see you have a bunch, but you have all the classics, but I threw in some interesting ones.
Well, let's see. Who went first last? Did you go first or last? Or I did?
Doesn't matter. You go.
Okay. I put these in order as best I could remember in the movie.
Okay.
And this is what I liked about. Remember when I said earlier about I wanted the cold open of the movie longer, is that Charlton Heston though is saying, "Tell me though, does man, that marvel of the universe, that glorious paradox who sent me to the stars, still make war against his brother and keep his neighbor's children starving?" And that's kind of a smack on warmongering.
Yes.
And I wanted some more kind of commentary on that, or just some general musings. But it is what it is. So.
Yeah, I know. One for me would be Taylor, and there is one reality left. We are here, and it is now. You better hold on to that, otherwise you will be dead. And then Landon responds and saying, "I'm prepared to die." And Taylor goes, "Ha ha! He's prepared to die. Doesn't that make you misty? Chalk one up for the human spirit." And that's at the very beginning when they get off and they're in the desert area and just surviving on what they can.
Yeah, because they had like 3 days worth of rations.
Correct. And you see them at one point when they're attacked or their stuff is taken. All that stuff's all spilt out. Yeah. Because the inhabitants don't know, the humans don't know. Because they're pretty much apes.
Yes. The next one I have is, of course, "Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape."
The classic line.
Which I've used in various forms, like paraphrased it. So.
Yeah. Well, the next one for me would be Taylor again, saying, "At least they didn't try to bite us." And Dodge goes, "Blessed are the vegetarians." And that was after they see the human natives, after they have taken their clothes and food and survival gear, and they were grabbing what looked like coconuts or something from the trees. And Dodge at that point was eating one himself. Yeah.
Next one I have, this is when Taylor got separated by the apes from Nova in his cell. Is he's getting sprayed with a fire hose as she's being taken out. And he's screaming, "It's a madhouse, a madhouse." Again, I've used that one too.
I've had that too, and I actually had that down as well. So it tells me that I have not watched or looked at what you've written. But same thing, classic line. And I think we've all done that, whether in gaming. It's a madhouse.
I've used it countless times over the years because it's just, again, one of these iconic lines and that's what makes this movie iconic. Yeah. It's got so many quotable lines on it. Yeah.
Next up for me would be, you know what they say, human see, human do. And that was the helper talking about Bright Eyes, or Taylor, and Zira just loves that he tries to talk.
Yeah, and this again was the writers. You said earlier that the writers putting some humor in. Yeah. Okay. My next one is during Taylor's trial. Is that they're questioning Taylor since he's allegedly so smart. He says, "Tell us, why are all apes created equal?" And on his commentary about the ape society, he says, "Some apes, it seems, are more equal than others."
Bingo. It's such a commentary too.
Yeah, and this kind of reminds me of when I read Animal Farm. In this quote, this quote said, about the quote on the writing on the wall that's done by the pigs, says all animals are created equal, but some are more equal than others. Yes, and there's that kind of mirroring.
It's history repeats itself all the time. So. Yeah. Next one up for me, that would be, you did it. You cut up his brain, you bloody baboon. And it was after Taylor sees Landon in the courtyard from the roundup of humans from the hunt during the trial. And
Zaius obviously had him lobotomized.
Yes. Yeah, you see it clearly, and it's like he knew. It's like, oh, Zaius knew all the time.
Yeah, and his head was shaved, and he had this horseshoe-shaped scar on his head.
Correct, yeah.
My next one is when Taylor is leaving with Nova. He's on horseback, and he's talking about a planet where apes evolved for men. There's got to be an answer. To which Dr. Zaius replies, "Don't look for it, Taylor. You may not like what you find." And we found out he didn't like what he found.
No, he didn't. And we got that iconic ending. Last one up would be the humorous part of the movie that I loved. And that would be Zira's nephew, Lucius. And Taylor going, why did you shave off your hair? And he's like, in my planet, all the young kids wore beards. Beards? That's a fad.
Yeah.
Coming from an ape with hair all over him. The humor aspect that I just love about the movie itself.
Mm-hmm.
And Lucius was a character that I really did enjoy too at the very end. He tried so hard.
Yeah.
He was trying to protect and do everything he needed to. And Taylor actually treated him like a regular kid,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have two more. My next to last one is Zira and Dr. Zayas talking about Taylor as he's leaving the dig site with Nova.
Mm.
She asks him, "What will he find out there, Doctor?" And Dr. Zayas replies, "His destiny."
Very true.
Yeah. And it's this whole thing about, it just kind of gives this ominous tone.
Yes. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I don't have any other quotes, so if you could throw out your last one, that would be great.
And the one to finish out the movie, it says, "Oh my God, I'm back. I'm home. All the time. We finally really did it. You maniacs, you blew it up. Damn you, God damn you all to hell."
Yep.
Which, again, has to be, the whole twist ending and that iconic line is, and I've looked on other lists, it's the most quotable, one of the most quoted lines ever.
Yeah.
Out of this. Or it's at very least in the top 10.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, and the twist ending has to be, again, and probably in the top 20 of twist endings, of all these. So.
All these movies. All right. Well, that was our coverage of Planet of the Apes, 1968. So with that, we do what we always do on this podcast, and we rate this movie 1 to 10 on an adrenaline scale. So what do you got?
I got a solid 9 on this.
Give it a 9 too.
Mm-hmm.
It might be dated, but it still holds true to how it represents, and that's how I feel about it. Not because I grew up on this and I loved it since I was a kid, also for the fact that I was able to watch it from different eyes of not watching it for, I would say, at least 2 years that I have actually sat down and watched this movie specifically. So it does hold with the effects for its time. Now, mind you, there was that one blue screen effect when they're talking across the Forbidden Zone, when you see Roddy McDowell on one side and you could see there's like a little, but other than that, everything holds true and holds very well, except, other than the lip thing with the apes, but everything else as far as makeup and costume was really good.
Yeah, and there's certain cultural references that are appropriate for the time, but not to 50 years later like today.
Yeah, that is true. It kind of dates it to some degree, but I think we could all understand that, and younger viewers or listeners will appreciate that as well.
Yeah, and when I watch a movie, and like an older movie, I always say, well, what year was it made? And I try and think in context of the time. Because that does, and it does have some bearing on it. So you just always got to consider.
I think that happens with a lot of movies that are adapted. And like I stated before, they had made one in the 90s by Tim Burton, and then that was a one-off. And that was very interesting. Very similar with the effects, too, by the way. A lot of them are practical effects, for the most part, within that movie. And then we get the 2000s version with James Franco, and it was a trilogy. And they are modern effects, but they do house the same feel and represent properly for its time. So I highly recommend that to all your listeners. So if you're really interested, I suggest you go seek those out. I have all of them. I own all of them.
All 9.
Yeah. And we highly recommend that you actually check out the other sequels after this particular movie too, within the 70s. They're very interesting. It is, like Jerry had stated, it shows proven to the time at that time, because it does kind of set its tone for the commentary for its time.
Mm-hmm.
And each is very unique and very interesting to watch. So it's kind of like history, but cinematic. And I really do enjoy that.
Exactly.
All right. Well, now on to guilty pleasure movies. So that could be any movie that are not popular or great, but you just love because you love to watch it. But other people don't like it, might have really a bad IMDb credit. People hear that name of that movie and they say, that movie sucked. Or they have no clue as to what the hell you're talking about, but you just love it. So what would that be, Jared?
From 1972, we have Gargoyles.
Ooh. I love that movie.
Yeah, it's not high quality, but it's great because, this is the story about a paleontologist coming across and his daughter, while traveling through the southwestern U.S., stumble upon a colony of living gargoyles.
Yep.
And it stars Cornell Wilde, Scott Glenn in a very early role.
Yes, very early Scott Glenn.
Yeah. Jennifer Saul as Diana.
Yep.
And Bernie Casey. And Bernie Casey just recently passed away, I think a couple years ago.
Yes.
Recently. And I really liked him in this role. And they did a voice changing algorithm on him to give him this really gruff kind of
Yes, they used at the time they used like harmonizers, pitch
like
shifters, things of that nature within audio engineering that I'm very familiar with.
Yes.
And just to give him that raspiness and pitched voice.
Yeah, and it would have worked for me a little bit better as because I remember seeing this and being scared by a kid, because I think I saw it in 78 or so.
Oh, wow.
And it was a TV movie done in 72.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that still qualifies.
It still qualifies.
Yeah.
I brought this up to a friend of mine recently, too, and they're like, what, Gargoyles the cartoon? No, Gargoyles the movie. What? Mm-hmm. There was a movie?
And it would have worked better for me had I not spotted the zippers on the suits.
Yes, that too, as well. It was a low budget movie. Come on.
Oh, yeah.
It was the 70s.
Yeah. And it's one of these things that's like, it's not a great movie, but it is available, I believe, on YouTube for free. So you can just look at it.
Yeah, you could do it for free on YouTube. There'll be ads. So every once in a while you have to hit skip or whatever. But it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cool thing. And that's cool that we actually have that available to us.
Yes.
Well, with mine, that would be Robinson Crusoe on Mars from 1964.
Nice.
So we have a young Adam West that starts the movie off. It was before he did Batman in 66. Mm-hmm. This is where they were, but his character kind of goes on the wayside, and it goes to the lead actor at that point. It pretty much plays the same way or the same thing in the beginning of the film. A crew set out on an expedition to the stars and, of course, Mars. Unlike the movie Martian that came out a while back in the 2000s, this is something from the 60s, and it's just something that I've enjoyed as a kid in the 70s watching this. Now, mind you, I was born in 72, so I watched this in the late 70s when it was aired on like Sunday afternoon or whatever, and my father enjoyed the movie, I enjoyed the movie, my brother enjoyed the movie. We just enjoyed that movie, and it's very interesting take on the Robinson Crusoe idea on Mars. And the funny little tidbit within the movie is that they do have a monkey. Mm-hmm. So I highly recommend that if you guys are interested in that. So
now, I've heard the name before, but I've never seen this one, so now I gotta look it up.
Yeah, you gotta look it up. It's interesting. It's kind of slow paced, but you get to see very much like in the movie The Martian, very similar to how he has to handle things on Mars. Yeah. So I highly recommend it. So if you guys are interested, go watch it. You can probably find it somewhere.
Yep. Probably available on YouTube.
Pretty much. I don't know. I haven't checked. All right. So as we wind this down and get down to the nitty gritty, Well, where can listeners hear you, Jerry?
I've been on other episodes of Adrenaline, like we did. We did the
Sinbad Eye of the Tiger,
Sinbad, and The Thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been on our friend Damien's podcast, Watched It in the 80s, where we covered Clash of the Titans.
Yep.
And I've been on Wilhelm, our friend Ben's podcast, where we did the film on film car chases.
Yep. That could be found on the Next Level Network too. So check that out.
And I just did a podcast recently with our friend Alex on Field to Screen, where we covered 8 Men Out.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And that should be released sometime soon. I don't know. I wasn't sure. Yeah, I wasn't given exactly a date yet. So.
But yeah, we'll keep you guys apprised about that and let you guys know when you can check out Jerry on Field to Screen.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, you could hear me as well on Panels to Pixels podcast. And we wrapped up our Loki coverage for Loki season 1. So now we know there's going to be a season 2. I'm really enjoying the fact that we're getting a season 2. We also did a Black Widow movie cover. So we covered all of Black Widow of 2021 with Natasha Romanoff and her adventures within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So you could hear Steve and I cover that, Steve Brown and myself, on Panels to Pixels podcast, and that can be found on the Next Level Network. So check us out there. You can find us on the nextlevelnetwork.com. So check us out there. We'll be back. We're taking a little bit of a break. You'll get these episodes. They're going to be later. I'm sorry. But we'll be back with What If when it comes out. And we highly recommend TV Podcast Industries as well as House Podcastica on the Podcastica Network as well, when Jason covers that as well. So you have 3 people that you know that are covering What If from the MCU or Disney Plus Marvel.
Yeah, so, I am looking forward to that one.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that too. I really want to see those shows. I have a ton of different versions of What If on in comic form from the 70s and the 60s, and some from the 80s too. But I really didn't get into it in the 90s. But I'm looking forward to seeing what they have adapted or created specifically for that show. So you can check me out there, Panels to Pixels on the Next Level Network with Steve Brown. And for you to submit your theories and feedback, you could just go to our Facebook page, which would be facebook.com/Adrenaline Cinema Podcast. So with that, when we do post of what we're going to be covering, you'll see an image and we'll say, we'll be covering that this week. All you have to do is comment down below the image and we'll read those comments just the same. You could also send us an email at adrenalincinemapodcast@gmail.com. And with that, you could just send a really standard text form of your feedback, or you could just record yourself and send it as an attachment, and we'll play it on the show. And we've done this before. So with that, we could be heard on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, TuneIn, Deezer, or whatever podcast player of choice that you are using. So obviously you found us, and the best thing you could do for us is, word of mouth. If you have a friend and they're interested in something that you heard from us, please mention it. That would be great. So that way it gives us more listeners and people are able to listen to what we have here. If you're really engaged with what we're saying, please send in some feedback. And if there's a rating or review, we do appreciate that as well on all those platforms. So right now, we're currently looking to add more to the Pirate Core Entertainment, which is where Adrenaline Cinema Podcast is located. So Adrenaline Cinema Podcast can be found on piratecoreentertainment.com. With there, you could see Watched It in the 80s. You could find Run for Your Lives, and you could find Adrenaline Cinema Podcast, as well as Kirk Manley's artwork and all the links to his artwork, which he has done for Panels to Pixels and eventually for Adrenaline Cinema. And he has done stuff for Podcastica as well. So he's a great friend. We highly recommend that you check out the piratecoreentertainment.com website for that. So if you or a friend are a content creator and is interested in being involved within the Pirate Core Entertainment Network, as it were, please submit a sample of your work and just send that to piratecoreentertainment@gmail.com. And we're not just looking for podcasters. We're also looking for video content creators, people who are content creators. It could be Instagram, Twitter, anything. And all that is required for when you do join us, and we do love what you're doing and we feel that you could be part of this family. All you have to say is recommend, or just recommend what we're doing on the network to other people, whether it be podcasting, video content, anything. And that's all that we require. There's no payment required. So with that, I just want to thank everyone for listening. I'm Mark.
I'm Jerry.
And this was Adrenaline Cinema Podcast. And we'll talk